What up, Wizards? It's Dev. Good news. Mono Black is back to cracked backs, mostly because of just one guy, Cecil, or Cecil, as people have told me to pronounce it. I think it's a UK-US thing, but I am from the United States of America, home of the Detroit Tigers' designated hitter, Cecil Fielder. Wait a minute.
And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech.
His name really is pronounced Cecil Fielder. Point in your guys' favor, I guess. Anyway, Cecil, I hate saying it that way. Cecil is a 1-mana 2/3 Death Touch, which is the fattest stat line anywhere outside of Memphis. Now, he does do this other thing on the front half of the card. It's not that important. Don't worry about it. We'll get to it in a second. But I kind of want to stick with the 1-mana 2/3 Death Touch stat line there. You know, this and a couple other cards we're playing give our aggro deck a kind of unique ability amongst aggro decks to block. This guy is a silent guardian, a watchful protector, what do you call him, Gary Oldman?
A dark knight.
Well, yeah, Gary Oldman. It says that right there on the card. Celebrities never really add any insightful commentary, do they? I was kind of hoping he'd tell you about what the rest of the card does, but I guess I'll take it from here, Gare Bear. Now, this does do the other thing. I said I was going to get to it. I guess I've minimized it enough at this point. This, whenever it deals damage to anything, whether it's an opponent or a creature, it deals that damage right back to you. But this can actually be framed as a good thing, because once you're at 10, this thing flips over into Paladin Cecil, so suddenly it's a 4/4 lifelink, and whenever it attacks, all the other attacking guys gain indestructible, which is probably alright for your aggro deck, I guess, but he also gains you back some of the life that he lost you in the first place, which is chill of him. You know, good looking out, dude. This is a 1-mana investment for an eventual 4/4 lifelink that makes all the other boys indestructible when it swings, so I think by current modern Magic standards, that's fine. It's at least fine. But if we're going to play Cecil over here, then it's probably a good idea to play some stuff that works our life total down as fast as possible so we can flip old Cecil faster than a strawberry crepe. Probably flip those pretty quickly, I imagine. But anyway, we're going to play one copy, just one, of Dark Knight's Greatsword in the deck. That's kind of painful. Gotta be honest, hurts my heart slightly that this worked its way down to a 1 of, and the proper number's probably a none of, right? But I just had to hold on to it and play the Silver Bullet here because it does too much cool stuff with other creatures in the deck. The problem, however, is that it doesn't work very well on the guy that it's supposed to go on for flavor purposes, right? You throw this on a Cecil, and then even if he gets blocked, you're going to lava axe yourself every turn. And no matter how quickly you're trying to flip him, you don't want that. I guess it is cool, though, once you flip Cecil over to throw a Dark Knight's Greatsword on him, which is interesting because in the game, he can't use the Dark Knight's Sword anymore once he becomes a Paladin, but in Magic the Gathering, he totally can. Then you have a 7-power lifelinker just go hog wild with, so I like that about it. But apart from the Cecil kind of non-bow into actual combo, there's a lot of other stuff this looks really, really good with in the deck, and we'll go through it as we get to it. But honestly, I just like having the one of this, because if we do draw it, it makes sure that even after sweepers and stuff, so long as we draw into one creature, we basically always have a sizable threat on the table, and that is valuable. But again, once you start seeing stuff like Sinkhole Surveyor in the deck, you start realizing, like, oh, okay, Dark Knight Greatsword's okay, you know, because basically you can get Sinkhole Surveyor swinging for 5 on turn 3, which is kind of okay, I guess, but Sinkhole Surveyor is just a card that's been looking for a home for a couple of sets now, and it definitely found one in the Cecil deck. Again, you want to work your life total down just bit by bit, and this can do that in a couple of ways. Is it a Bitter Blossom? Absolutely not, but you see why I'm drawing the comparison. Is it a Ledger Shredder? Even more no, but again, I hope you can vaguely see why I'm drawing the comparison. It's a 2-mana 1/3 flyer that can get a little bit larger every single turn like a Ledger Shredder, and by turn 4 or 5, that's actually a pretty big guy. But for once, we kind of have to make some room for other black 2-drops. I feel like we haven't had this many great black 2-drops for an aggro deck in a good long time, but that said, Dark Confidant's not necessarily one of them. You know, this isn't going to do all of the attacking or even all the blocking in the world, but we've got other creatures for the blocking. Don't worry. Either way, Bob can really draw some cards, and our curve is relatively low in this deck, and often he'll just draw lands anyway, so he won't deal any damage to us. But if we do end up losing some life to old Bob over here, then that's fine, so long as we have a Cecil in play, of course. We can just flip him over faster. So again, even though he doesn't have the most impressive body in the world, which I can sympathize with there, but he still does let us get the same value as like a Phyrexian Arena or an Unholy Annex every turn, while still putting a body on the board, which is technically more aggro than those other cards. But we've also got other ways to draw cards like Gix, Yawgmoth, proprietor? I've been trying to pronounce this word since I was 11 years old, and I'm just not sure I've ever nailed it. Praetor. Is that right? I don't know. But either way, this guy also draws you cards, and sometimes draws you multiple cards in a turn. And with all of our death touch guys and our flying guys, we have a lot of both of those. We'll be getting through for combat damage pretty reliably. And when it comes to those little death touch dudes, your opponent doesn't often want to block them, but when you've got a Gix on the table, now they got to make a decision. Between Bob and Gix, which would be a great buddy comedy, but let me get back on subject. We have a lot of ways of drawing cards in our aggro deck, which is kind of insane, but we also have a lot of ways of draining our own life, which is not great. Even if you're trying to flip over Cecil, you don't want to just be doing this all game, so we actually do have some main deck lifelink guys, like the 4 copies of Deep Cavern Bat over here, which we kind of have to play anyway, because it's the best black 2-drop in Standard, like, kind of by a lot. It might be the best 2-drop in Standard. Corey Steelcutter is the best 2-drop in Standard, but this is on the top 3 for sure. Wait, up the Beanstalk. This is on the top 5, at least. It's a hell of a Magic card. Deep Cavern Bat is still very good, and if you want to throw a Dark Knight's Greatsword on something, Deep Cavern Bat makes a great target. Deep Cavern Bavern. Creature type Bavern. This, on the play at least, can get stuff like Corey Steelcutter out of the opponent's hand, but it is actually the best 2-drop in Standard because it can get all the other 2-drops out of the opponent's hand on the play. You got to give that to it. This can also grab stuff that people built their whole deck around, the Simulacrum Synthesizer, or God forbid that Una Hope of Spira, man. I've seen a lot more of that card lately. It's so scary. But you can grab any of that stuff with this. And of course, you can also just grab Removal, which will probably do 85 times out of 100. Or maybe you snatch that Omniscience out of their hand, the Abuela's Awakening, make them kill the bat before they can go off. This is it's a really good Magic card, I don't have to tell you. But there's also 2 copies of Carsey Revenant in here. Not only does it have Death Touch, not only does it have Flying, it has both of those things, and it has lifelink too, so if we're going a little overboard, drinking a little too much from that Cecil bottle or whatever, then we can also just gonna take a shot or two every turn and get some lifelink off this guy. Or if we want to put lifelink on Cecil before he flips over, then I guess we can negate his own effect. But this can go on like a large Sinkhole Surveyor in the late game and kind of do a lot of lifelink damage that way. So a lot of good lines for Carsey Revenant in this deck. Also holds a distinction for being the single best guy in the deck to hold on to that Dark Knight's Greatsword for you, man. He starts flailing that thing around and stuff gets ugly, dude. So you'll understand why Dark Knight's Greatsword is in the deck in the first place when you put it on Carsey Revenant. But there's even more creatures. This is an aggro deck, if you'll remember. I'm playing 3 copies of Tiny Bones, the Pickpocket in here. Not just because of the Death Touch, but mostly because, again, we're an aggro deck that likes to block every now and again. You have to be realistic in this format. You're going to be coming up against Mono Red or some variant or Corey Steelcutter Is-It decks like most matches. So you kind of have to be prepared for that and understand that even though you're an aggro deck, sometimes you got to block. And Tiny Bones is really good at that, but against other decks, he's really good at getting into their graveyard. But this actually works really nicely with Cecil, which is kind of what broke the tie between it and a bunch of other cards that I tried out. Forsaken Miner and very notably Gas Guzzler, but it turned out that our mono black deck already kind of drew cards reliably, so I didn't really feel like we needed Gas Guzzler, weirdly enough. I could still see playing it, but I ended up choosing Tiny Bones for a variety of reasons, blocking being one, but also because he works really nicely with Cecil. Cecil trades with a creature early in combat, then maybe just a turn or two later. Tiny Bones can grab that creature that Cecil traded with out of their graveyard and list it to play on our side of the table, which is really good down and dirty in the trenches against all these other aggro decks. Also works really nicely in tandem with at least one of the discard effects that I'm going to show you a little bit later in the video. Cool combo there, but for now, Tiny Bones is just kind of a solid little dude. We need a few more 1-drops in our aggro deck, and I think Tiny Bones does a good job. But to finish the creatures up here, I'm on 2 copies of Archfiend of the Dross. Now, you could definitely play Sheld the Apocalypse here. I think it'd be pretty good in an aggro deck like this to head up the top of the curve, right? It provides some form of reach for us, and by the point that we play Sheldred, our life total should be relatively low if things are working the way that we've drawn them up, so Sheldred can help bring our life total back up when we draw cards. I kind of like that about her too, but ultimately I don't want to afford Sheldred in a deck like this. Right now in paper, this deck costs well under $100, and actually I think it cost about as much as one Sheldred does to buy this entire deck without her, and Archfiend of the Dross is just as good as Sheldred a lot of the time against other aggro decks. For one, this can fly in for 6, 9 if it's wearing a Dark Knight's Greatsword, which is kind of fun, but still 6 damage is an awful lot in the air, and that line of text everybody ignores is really, really good against other aggro decks. If we just blow their stuff away with our removal, or if we just take advantage of the fact that we have like a million Death Touch creatures creatures in our deck and block their guys, well then suddenly they're taking an awful lot of damage from Archfiend's last abilities. So yeah, there's a little bit of danger to playing this card, but I actually think for an aggro black deck, it's the best 4-drop in the format. But here are the 4 cut downs and the 4 go for the throats you knew were going to be in the deck. Play them while you can play them. I don't know if you guys know this. I'll drop a bombshell on you, but rotation is in like 6 weeks. And both of these cards rotate out. So I don't know what that's going to mean for the format, but I know that I'm just about sick of seeing them everywhere. So good riddance in some ways, but again, while we can play them and we are a mono black aggro deck, we really ought to. These are phenomenal removal spells, and I don't have to tell you that, but we're also on 4 copies of Duress to finish off the main deck, which is still our secret weapon. It is possible that Duress is the best card in the format. It actually is. On turn 1, this can get the Carsey Steel Cutter out of the opponent's hand, regardless of whether we're on the play or the draw, which is kind of important. Once we are on the play, this can get like Storm Chaser's Talent out of the opponent's hand. It can often nab Monstrous Rages, up the Beanstalks, which is a really good target for this. There is no end to the stuff. And Abuelo's Awakening against the Omniscience deck, you can just take their reanimation option away. There's a lot of stuff that Duress does right now, even against the aggro deck, so it's in a uniquely good position at the moment. Not only that, but it's got a specific interaction in the deck with Tiny Bones, where even relatively early in the game, starting on turn 3 theoretically, you can get in with Tiny Bones and steal the Carsey Steel Cutter that you ended up duressing out of their hand earlier that game. Now we're on a whole 22 lands here. Maybe another reason to cut the 4 drops, but I still believe in Archfiend of the Dross, one way or the other. We don't need to overdo it on the land count here, especially as a monocolored aggro deck. We can get away with a lower land count and a couple of copies of Mishra's Foundry, for that matter. There are sweeper decks in the format right now, and sweepers just keep getting better. We just got Ultima. Thing looks dumb, so you'll probably see stuff like that around. It's nice to be packing some creature lands. But let's take a look at our board now. A really important bit of this deck. We are targeting 2 decks specifically, Carsey Steel Cutter, and maybe even more importantly, Omniscience deck. So with that in mind, we're playing the full complement of Ghost Vacuum, a playset here. And this is actually one of the more expensive cards in the entire deck. But if you're going to win games of best of 3 with this thing against combo decks like Omniscience, you have got to pack this card. Now, I'm also on 2 Shoot the Sheriff in here, which was originally Disfigure. I thought that would be the play, but ultimately I just decided that I wanted another pseudo-unconditional removal spell in here, and even though it can't kill like a Slick Shot Show-Off, it can kill just about everything that people are actually playing in the environment right now. But we've also got a 4th copy of Gix in here from when we want to draw more cards. That happens a lot. There's also 2 Carsey Revenant against mono red variants and 2 Gix's Command for the same. This can just completely obliterate opposing aggro decks in the late game. Here are your power rankings right here. Your favorite part, a final score of 67 over here. We're not super versatile, and we're not too resilient for that matter, despite how many cards we might draw in the deck. But all that said, we make up for some of our subpar numbers by having pretty high numbers in both offense and defense, which in some ways are the most important categories. We also avoid the pitfall of some aggro decks where they get way worse after they board out. Usually, decks are more ready for aggro in games 2 and 3, but in our sideboard, we can get that Ghost Vacuum, we can get that Dreams of Steel and Oil, we can get that Cool Claws Heist to take away your stuff, we can get that Gix's Command to blow you completely out depending on what deck you are. So again, this is a rare aggro deck that actually has, good cards in its sideboard, a real game plan in games 2 and 3, which I think a lot of aggro decks are lacking. Now for this week's example game, I'd love to show you one against mono red, but this is how it always works out. We get Cecil on turn 1, they scoop, so instead I'll show you a game against a brand new deck that you might have been encountering in the arena from time to time this week. It's Orzhov's Sephiroth. They go first and start with Infestation Sage, but we get our turn 1 Cecil, so we feel like we're in pretty good shape. On turn 2, they'll run out Bartolome, so it's kind of working out for them exactly the way they drew it up. We consider casting Cut Down and then realize that they could just sacrifice the Infestation Sage and the resulting thing and keep their Bard, so we'll just swing in with Cecil after playing a Sinkhole Surveyor. They're actually going to take the double block here, such as the power of Cecil. We will lose our Dark Knight, and they will get a 1/1 flying token. We still have our Surveyor, though. Here comes Nesting Bot and a Vengeful Blood Witch. So they're just going to run a bunch of small guys out and a Blood Artist. That's pretty good for aristocrats, but we're going to get Deep Cavern Bat on this turn, take that Lively Dirge away from them so they can't get their dudes back, and then cut down the Vengeful Blood Witch to cut down on the shenanigans from over there. We're going to get in with our Sinkhole Surveyor, pump it up by 1, and they're just going to take the 2. So they're at 17, but we're actually at a lower life total, 16. They get their last couple of little guys, Forsaken Miner and Infestation Sage, and come in with their other 2 little guys. We go down to 14, and we're just going to play Carsey Revenant here, starting to be the beginning of the end. We waffle back and forth here, but we will make a 1-1 with the Sinkhole Surveyor when we attack, making sure that the attack on the other side doesn't get a little heavy for us. We've still got a Carsey Revenant to block, and this chump blocking token, but here comes Sephiroth, baby. So if they still had Bartolome here, they could probably flip over the Sephiroth, and that would be a real problem. But instead, they just sacrifice a token to him, they draw their card, and we are going to come in on a pretty big attack here with a Revenant, a Sinkhole Surveyor, and a Deep Cavern Bat. We played Gix earlier in the turn, so we're just going to draw 3 here. For some reason, they're all swamps, but that lets us run out another Sinkhole Surveyor and say go, giving them a scary turn with Sephiroth here. But they only have 1 card in their hand. They're going to get in, sack the Nesting Bot to draw the card, and make a little guy. They're going to go to full speed here, but we'll just block with the Gix, trade with the Sephiroth, and we may take a little damage. They may gain a little life, but it's not too big of a deal. Good game, opponent. Sui Black has been around since 1998, or maybe even before that, and I'm not sure that it's ever existed in a better form than this. I mean, Cecil's a little bit better than, say, Carnophage. This, in some ways, is really a deck that's been near and dear to a lot of people's hearts for almost 30 years now, and I'm glad that somebody remembered that over at Wizards of the Coast. It was good to actually be able to play a deck like this once more. And even better, the fact that Cecil is a part of it. I know not everybody loves Universes Beyond and Standard, but again, I've been through this. Final Fantasy means a lot to me, and honestly, the character of Cecil might mean more to me than almost any other character in the Final Fantasy canon, so it was cool that the first deck that the patrons picked this season was for this guy. But either way, report back. Let me know how you did, man. What cards would you play in this deck? Is there anything that I missed that you think absolutely has to be in here? I read your comments. Let me know how you feel about this whole endeavor down there. And we'll be back again soon. I'm trying to get in more deck techs these next few seasons here, but there's a lot more to talk about. We got to talk about that impending rotation a couple of times in the next few weeks here, so get ready for that. There's a big ban announcement coming up. Are they going to ban Monstrous Rage? They're going to ban up the Beanstalk? I guess we'll have to wait and see. So there's a lot to talk about in the Magic world over the next few weeks, including eventually Edge of Eternities. We'll get there very soon, sooner than you think, but just subscribe to the channel for all that content, and of course hit the button shaped like a thumb. Kind of hard to miss down there. You can also check out the Patreon. That's why we're doing this deck first, is the patrons picked it. If you want to vote on what decks we do this standard season and what commander decks we do in the next few weeks too, then go on over to the Patreon. Just $1 a month to sign up is all I'm really asking from you, and that helps support the channel to a massive degree. But anyway, I am Dunzo for this onezo. That is in fact Allski Kowalski, so I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from the place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.